Hi guys, it's James. First time doing like a daytime video, I think. I thought I'd change things up a little, in that it's not like I'm running out of ideas for movie lists. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But I do need to commit a little more time to refreshing myself on some of the movies that I have on the list, because then I don't, and I can't, I'm a little foggy on the details because it's been so long since I watched some of the movies. I begin to stutter and stuff. So I figured I'd try something different, and I'm going to try and come up with some other different movie list ideas, and have gotten some suggestions about them. But I figured I'd try some of my favorite episodes of my favorite TV shows, such as Buffy, Lost, Angel, and in this case, Burn Notice, and in this case, The Walking Dead. And so I'm going to do my top 10 Walking Dead episodes. So without further ado, I'm going to start with number 10. Number 10 is Season 2, Episode 10, and it's called 18 Miles Out. And this one is where, let me preface this by saying, I'm going to spoil the episode, so if you haven't gotten up to date on the series, up to the end of Season 10, prior to the 6 episodes, bonus episodes they're doing, yeah, I'm gonna spoil some stuff, so go watch the whole series like I'm doing again for the 3rd time right now, and come back. Or why would you watch the top 10 Walking Dead episodes if you haven't watched The Walking Dead? Or this may spur you to watch them. I mean, like, as I always say, if spoiling the ending or one detail of a movie or a TV show ruins it, then they just made a good twist, and then they didn't make a good episode or movie. And I'll explain why further. 18 Miles Out, Rick and Shane decide to take their captive Randall, the guy who was left over in town when they went to get Herschel after he went on his bender, and then they kill the 2 guys in the bar and the friends that came with him in town, and Randall fell onto a fence, and they had to get him off of that and take him back to the farm so he didn't die, and they kept him captive, and they were either going to A, kill him, or B, take him far enough he wouldn't know how to get back and let him go. So they finally decide to let him go, and Rick and Shane take him out to, I think, a nearby school or building, and on the way, though, they decide to have a talk, and they're out in the middle of nowhere, and Shane had gotten Rick's family out of town when the outbreak happened, and because they thought Rick was dead. And Rick and Shane and Lori got together as a couple, and it was understandable. They thought Rick was dead, and then Lori became pregnant, and she's not sure if it's Rick or Shane's, because Rick had come back and they got back together. She broke it off with Shane. But Shane's obsessed with her, doesn't want to let go, and she's like, you need to let go, and even if this baby is yours, it's still Rick's. It's never going to be yours. And Shane's a little on edge anyway. So Rick figures all this out, and he needs to have a final talk with Shane, like, to get things straight. So they're out there, and they have a big argument. They end up having a big fight later on. But the thing I like so much about this episode is there's a little monologue that Shane does, that there's this composer named Zach Hemsey, and he did this piece called Vengeance that shows up at the end of The Equalizer, the remake of the TV show starring Denzel Washington. And there's a piece of music that plays while he's taking out all the guys in that Home Depot place that he works at. And he has another piece of music called The Way. And several people have cut segments of Walking Dead episodes, various Walking Dead episodes over the seasons, into that piece of music, and I have like 5 or 6 of them that I listen to all the time. They've also done with other movies and TV shows, but the ones of The Walking Dead are the best. And the very first one I listened to opened with Shane's quote about when it all started. It was just some weird stories on the news, and then it happened so quick, and the walkers came through, and they were shooting people, and it's such a good monologue. And I mean, other stuff happens in the episode. Mainly their brutal fight, and Shane throwing a wrench through the window, and the walkers coming out and stuff like that, and them deciding to take Randall back to the farm. But it's that part that I like so much in the episode. So that's number 10. Number 9 is the Season 7 premiere. Season 7, Episode 1. The day will come when you won't be. And it comes from a quote that Dr. Jenner said to Rick when he said, thanks for letting us out. I'm thankful. He's like, the day will come when you won't be. Like, you'll wish I had let you die in here with what ended up happening to him. But this was sort of like the part 2 to the cliffhanger that Season 6 finale left on. Where Negan does his eeny, meeny, miny, moe. You don't know who he's about to kill, and it ends up being Glenn and Abraham. Well, first it ends up being Abraham, and what I like a lot about this episode, took me a couple times to figure it out. But when Abraham and Sasha got together, prior to and during, they had this thing where they sort of like a greeting, and where they do this. Hold up 2 fingers, almost like a peace sign, just hold up 2 fingers and they do it back. And that was their thing. And when the eeny, meeny, miny, moe thing happens, and you find out it's Abraham. Abraham is on his knees, but he kind of rears up towards Negan, and he's about to kill him. And then you see Abraham's fingers come up like this. And to the left of him is Sasha. So that's who he's doing it to. He's like this, and his fingers are coming up because he's saying goodbye to Sasha. And I didn't realize it until the second or third time. But then I don't know how I couldn't, because you see Sasha, and you see her look down. She sees the finger, she sees the sign, and reacts to it. Now, everything else that happens is still pretty brutal, especially with Glenn's death and stuff. But it's a great episode anyway. But that's the part of the episode that gets me the most. And yeah, especially when like Negan takes Rick away, and like, get me my axe, Rick, and like all the fog, which just creates such an awesome atmosphere, like it did when the Whisperers take out Jesus. That was insane. But yeah, it works just as well in this episode. So that's number 9. Number 8 is the Season 6 finale, Last Day on Earth, the debut of Negan. Now, I had, when the show started, got through the first season, which was only 6 episodes, they put it out on DVD. So I picked it up and watched it. And it was great. And then Season 2 happened, which was 13 episodes. And then that came out on DVD. And then I got partway through it, and I sort of lost interest. I heard about the thing with Sophia coming out of the barn partway through the season, finding out that the whole time they've been looking for her, she's been in the barn as a walker. And I kind of got lost interest and fast-forwarded to that scene, and then I stopped and ended up getting rid of the DVDs. Well, over the years, I'm hearing like people at work talk about the show, and I didn't know what they were talking about. Like there's the prison, there's the governor, and like all the names. I didn't really remember any characters' names except for Rick, and didn't remember who Shane was or Lori and stuff like that. I remembered Rick, and I'd hear them talk about it, and it's like, yeah, you guys don't worry about spoiling it for me, because I have no idea what you're talking about. I stopped watching partway through Season 2. And then I heard about this infamous debut of Negan, infamous villain that finally debuted, who was big in the comics. So I'm like, you know what? I'm hearing so much about this, I'm going to watch the Season 6 finale. I haven't watched it since early Season 2. I'm going to watch the Season 6 finale. Loved the episode. No idea what was going on or who any of these people were except for Rick. but I loved it because the scene, the final 10-15 minutes with Negan and the Saviors was awesome. And then I went back, watched from episode 1 all the way through up to the end of season 6, and then in time to start season 7. And I've been hooked ever since. And that was it. And that, oh man, Jeffrey Dean Morgan does, and will always kill it as Negan. He just will. So that was at number 8. Number 7. Number 7 is season 7, episode 2, The Well. And this was the introduction of the kingdom. You saw one of the guys in the second last episode and the last episode of season 6, but you didn't know where he was from. But Carol's injured. The kingdom, after Morgan kills the one savior, the kingdom guys show up, take them back to the kingdom so Carol can recuperate. And she meets King Ezekiel, guy who runs the kingdom, and a little bit on the eccentric side, but he's putting on an act because he's a former stage actor and zookeeper and stuff like that. He's got the pet tiger. And the reason why, I mean, the kingdom is great, the introduction and all that, but it's the end of the episode where Carol is stealing some fruit from the grove and is about to leave, and Ezekiel catches her, and they have basically cards on the table, heart-to-heart talk. And Ezekiel lets his act, drops his act, and speaks to her completely plainly. And it's a night and day transformation where you just like, you know what, people need someone to follow. And he drops the whole like, I am King Ezekiel, and all the formal speech from like medieval times. And it's such a good, he does like 95% of the talking in that thing, and it's so good. Especially and the setting too, the atmosphere, like all the not torches, trash can fire that they have, just candle, like campfire lit kind of. So that was number 7. Number 6 is season 4, episode 15, and this is after Daryl got separated from Beth. She got picked up by the hospital people, and Daryl basically chases after him, doesn't catch him, and basically sits down in the middle of the road. And the Claimers, who you didn't know who they were, but they were the guys who like came into the house while Rick was sleeping, and he kills one of them, and then they escape. These were those guys, and they come upon Daryl, and basically Daryl's alone, so he goes with them, tries to become one of them. And what I like about this episode so much is Jeff Kober, one of my favorite character actors. He's the leader of the Claimers, named Joe, and he's explaining the rules to them. And we're just like, you claim something, one word, that's it, and it's yours. And they have a specific set of rules to keep things, as he says, from going Darwin every now and then. And I love almost anything he does, and I still think this is the best thing I've seen him in, was his role as Joe, leader of the Claimers. Now, the other thing in the episode is Glenn reuniting with Maggie after everyone getting separated from the prison, and they're going through the tunnel, and they ended up meeting together because Maggie was with Eugene and Rosita and Abraham, and Glenn was with Tara, who was formerly with the governor. Anyway, but it's the Daryl and the Claimers part of the story that I like so much. So that was number 6. Number 5 is season 9, episode 5, What Comes After. And this is Rick's final episode prior to Andrew Lincoln leaving the show, the guy who plays Rick. And he fell onto a rebar, and he had like a bar sticking out, and he had to get off of that because all these walkers were converging on him. And he's sort of going in and out of consciousness, riding a horse trying to get away from these walkers. And this was after he has the fight with Daryl, who was trying to distract him so Maggie could go and kill Negan, which she didn't end up doing. And Daryl and Rick had their fight, but made up afterwards. But Rick ended up getting injured at the end of episode 4. But Rick going in and out of consciousness allowed them to have hallucinations, where he hallucinates. They brought back John Bernthal as Shane for a little segment. They brought back Sonequa Martin Green as Sasha for a segment. They brought back Scott Wilson as Herschel for a segment, who sadly died before season 9 premiered, but he did get to film this. And it's a great episode, especially, I mean, everyone thinks that Rick's dead at the end of the episode, but he's not, because Jadis gets him picked up in the helicopter. But what gets me is Michonne's reaction. Like, there's a reaction when she thinks he's dead in season 7, where she just basically drops her sword and almost loses the whole will to live. But to see her reaction across the river when he blows up the bridge, and she just, and like, falls apart emotionally, was even more gut-wrenching, I suppose, another to repeat a word. But yeah, Rick's final episode, I can't wait till they do those Rick's movies or bring him back in some fashion. Just because he was too good. He was too good to not ever see him play that character again. So that was number 5. Number 4, season 5, episode 3. It's called Four Walls and a Roof. And this was after the group escapes from Terminus and the cannibals there. They're taking refuge in a church where they came upon Father Gabriel. But the Terminus cannibals are pursuing them. They end up capturing Bob, who showed up in season 4, beginning of season 4, at the prison. But they capture Bob, and they end up cutting off his leg, the lower half of his one of his legs, and eating it right in front of him. And the guy, the leader of the Terminus cannibals, has a great monologue too, for being such an evil guy. But then Bob basically reveals, like, joke's on you, I've been bit, you're eating tainted meat, and everyone is freaking out. Well, they end up dumping him back in front of the church, and then attacking the church, while the guys, the survivors, lead them away, and then surprise them by coming back. The cannibals come inside the church, and they surprise them, and end up taking them all out. But the point is, Bob is going to die. Probably from blood loss, but also from the fact that he was bit a day or two ago when they went into town. And he just didn't want to tell anybody. But he has a great dying scene, really, because he's talking to everyone, and he ends up talking to Rick while he's holding on to Judith. And there's a thing he says earlier where he says, like, no, Rick says, like, this is a nightmare. No, this is reality. And Bob says, no, this is a nightmare, nightmare's end. But he adds on to it this, where he says, like, no, he said, nightmares end, they shouldn't end who you are. And, well, no, he just really has a great interaction with Rick and Sasha. And it was a really sad way for one of the characters to go. And Tyrese gets almost a whole episode where he dies, and it almost made my list. But I thought Bob's was more striking, if that's the word, just because of the optimism Bob had while he was with the group. So, that was number 4. Number 3 is season 4, episode 12, and season 4, episode 12, and this is called Still. And this was one of a couple episodes. I want to say there was maybe 3 episodes where Daryl and Beth were off on their own. And this would be the middle of those. And this is where Beth is basically determined that she's never drank before, but she thinks now is as good a time to eat. She's gonna have her first drink. And Daryl's just like tolerating her. Just like, I gotta drag her around, I gotta keep her alive, and she's just like, you don't need to do this. I'm independent. I can do this on my own, which sometimes she can, sometimes she can't. But she's gonna have a drink, and he finally decides, okay, fine. She's going off to have her drink. I'm gonna go too. And they end up at a golf course, and she ends up with a bottle of like peach schnapps, and he ends up throwing it on the ground, saying, "You're not gonna have your first drink be no damn peach schnapps." And they end up going to a place that Daryl found with Michonne, and it was like an old like shack, and they find some moonshine there. It's like, this is a real drink. This is gonna be your first drink. And he ends up getting drunk, being like a bad, miserable drunk, and being pissed off, and like, but they end up making up over it, and he talks about him and Merle, and they decide, you know what, we should burn the place down. So they spread out splash all the moonshine all around, but there's this awesome song by the Mountain Goats that plays. I think it's called Up the Wolves. That plays over the end where they and it's the photo that I did for this one. It's like them giving the finger as the place burns down. And it's just a perfect way to end the episode. But it's a great episode anyway for only featuring two characters. So that was number 3. Number 2 is the season 1 finale. Season 1, episode 6, TS-19. Now, TS-19 was Test Subject 19. When Jenner starts talking to them, showing them what the virus actually is and does. Like, it kills you, and then they show the X-ray video of the subject coming back to life, but only a certain small part of the brain, like the brain stem, enough to get them to up and move around, and the desire to eat and kill, but nothing else. Like, the you doesn't come back. It's not you anymore. And it turns out that the test subject 19 was Jenner's wife, who was the brains behind the whole CDC operation there. He just worked there. And it's like, she should have done this. I can't do this. She was the brains. It shouldn't have been her. It should have been me. But there's a thing, they end up living there for like a day, and turns out that the place is going to count down and explode, destroy everything, because there's all the infectious diseases that exist there that can't get out. And this is what Jenner was going to do anyway. Now they're there. He lets them in. It's like, okay, but those doors aren't opening again, and they don't realize the meaning behind that, saying like, you're in, you're not getting back out. Well, it turns out that it's like, I wasn't lying. Those doors aren't going to open, but you can try and get out. He stays behind, and a few others initially are going to stay behind, but Dale and Andrea, Dale decides to stay, and like Andrea's like, no, we're going to go. But the one other lady, the African American actress, I can't remember her name, she decides to stay with Jenner. But the thing about this episode is as they're trying to escape and escaping and driving away, there's this piece of music, and I believe it's called Running to the Rain, and it's actually by Peter Gabriel. And it's from a movie that he scored called Rabbit Proof Fence, which I want to watch one of these days, because I heard it's good, but the good score can elevate the quality of a TV show and a movie. And this piece of music plays over the end, and it's just amazing. I don't know why it didn't stick out for me the first few times I watched it, but oh man, it's perfect, great music to go with the end of this episode. Different than Still, because that was a song with lyrics, and this is just instrumental, but still, the impact is the same. But Jenner, Noah Emmerich, who played Edwin Jenner in this, was just awesome. And like the photo I used was him whispering to Rick, and you don't know what he says, and you don't find out till the end of season 2, and this was the end of season 1. Basically saying, he was basically telling Rick that everyone has this. It's everywhere. It doesn't matter how you die, you'll come back as a walker. You'll come back as a zombie. Everyone's infected, but it doesn't kick in until you die. And then he tells them at the end of season 2. Yeah. All right, so that was number 2. Now, number 1 is season 6, episode 4, and it's called Here's Not Here. And the events in the episode largely take place, I believe, because Rick is with Morgan in season 1, episode 1, after he wakes up, which is after the outbreak has already happened. The world's ended. And then he leaves them, and then somewhere in between that and season 3, when they're at the prison, Rick, Michonne, and Carl go into town and get assaulted by Morgan, who has since, he lost his son and has lost his mind. They end up working things out, and they leave. Morgan stays, and between middle of season 3 and I would say middle of season 4 is when the events in this take place, because Morgan catches one of the wolves that attack Alexandria and keeps him captive. And basically, he had met up with him before and knocked him unconscious, saying like, "You want my life? You want everything? Here it is." And he basically tells him how he got his mind right and got back on a good path in life. And while you see towards the end of season 4 them going to Terminus, and it turns out that Morgan is following them, but Morgan is relatively normal now. So it was either, well, between the end of season 3 and the beginning of season 4, because it was called 30 Days Without an Incident, that was a whole month. And then the first half of season 4, and then second half of season 4. So it probably happened sometime in season 4, because he's crazy, meets up with Eastman, the guy who teaches him Aikido and the bow staff and stuff, gets him back on the right track for a few, I think he's with him for a few days, several days, maybe a week, I can't remember. And then he leaves and starts picking up their trail. But it's this episode where Eastman, played by, I can never remember his name. Season 6, episode 4. And his name is, yes, it's John Carroll Lynch. And he plays Eastman, a guy who's living out there on his own with a goat because he's trying to learn how to make cheese. And the interactions they have, and like the way he gets, it's not so much the way he brings Morgan back, but what he does to bring him back, because he used to be a psychiatrist, or like a psychotherapist, where he'd analyze and evaluate all these like horrible criminals and psychos and stuff like that. And he's saying like he only ever met one truly evil person, tells how that one evil person destroyed his life and made him come out there. Oh man, I love this episode so much. And again, it's basically 2 people. I mean, yeah, you count the wolf, but that's the bookends to the episode. The meat of the episode is largely 2 people, with like 2 pairs of extras kind of on either side. But oh man, just John Carroll Lynch again, like with Jeff Cobra. I think this is the best thing I've ever seen John Carroll Lynch in. Like he was great in Zodiac and other stuff, and The Invitation, if you ever see that movie, The Invitation. But his episode in this was just like award worthy, if you ask me. Just the interaction between him and Morgan is amazing. So that was number 1. Okay, so I don't know which one I'm going to do next, but just as a little change of pace. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this one, and I look forward to the next one. Toodles.